In this episode, we're going to number the achievements Pixar made with its movies, starting with modeling, creating virtual 3D models based on art designs. In Cars, the opening race featured 60,000 cars seated in the stands and an additional 700 cars in the infield and aisles. The final race had 100,000 seated cars and 1,500 cars in the infield and aisles. There are nearly 13,000 cars entering the stadium to find seats for the final race. 90% of all monsters in Monsters Incorporated have Mike's tongue rigging, creating virtual joints and muscles so the models can move. In Finding Nemo, Bruce the Great White Shark has 202 teeth, and each is individually animated. To save production time during Ratatouille, the artist skipped one detail: none of the human characters have toes, surfaces, creating the object's appearance using computer programs called shaders. To develop the desired look for Queen Eleanor's emerald dress in the film Brave, the art department took real matte silk fabric samples and painted metal colors onto the fabric, adding other subtle embellishments. Later, shading artists had to replicate the look in the computer. Lightning McQueen has 14 different paint variants in Cars, ranging from subtly different amounts of dirt and dust to the completely new paint jobs near the end of the film. The nearly 35,000 texture maps in Toy Story 2 occupy about 40 gigabytes of disk space. There are more than 10,000 texture maps for the humans alone. It took more than a month to digitally paint Elle's car for Toy Story 2. All of the bedroom doors in the door vault in Monsters Inc. were created from combinations of 26 paint colors, 12 styles, 8 wood colors, 10 decals, 6 door knobs, and 3 hardware types. For Ratatouille, Pixar filmmakers created about 270 pieces of food in the computer. Every food item was prepared and styled in a real kitchen, then photographed for reference and eaten. There are roughly 1,000 unique props in the interior of the truck in WALL-E. It took a team of 5 modelers and 5 shading artists more than a month to create them all. Brave was the first Pixar film with a castle, so the production team visited, researched, and studied a number of castles for reference. Dumbro Castle was designed from the ground up, inside and out. Everything from the architecture of the structure itself to the tapestries in the hall and the moss on the stone walls was designed and built as a computerized 3D model. During the production of Up, each animator produced an average of 4 seconds of animation per week. The most animation produced in 1 week of production on Toy Story 2 was 5 minutes and 42 seconds, because they lost a lot of footage. A technical director hand animated the hairs on Sully's fingers to make them react to Boo's touch near the end of Monsters Inc. In Monsters Inc., Sully has 25,336 key hairs that guide the motion and shape of the other 2.3 million hairs. Merida in Brave has more than 1,500 individually sculpted curly red strands that generate about 111,700 total hairs. There are 21,566 lights in 4 different shots when Lightning McQueen and Mac first get on the road to California in Cars. Monsters University took 100 million CPU hours to render, which is equivalent to 10,000 years for a single computer. It took almost 2 weeks to render the most complicated shot on The Incredibles. The voice of legendary sound designer Ben Burtt being used both for WALL-E and R2-D2. He's also worked on films like E.T. the Extraterrestrial and the Indiana Jones series as well. The original pitch for Monsters Inc. was to have a grown man to be haunted by monsters he drew as a kid. Director Pete Docter recounted his original pitch. My idea was that what it was about was a 30-year-old man who is like an accountant or something. He hates his job, and one day he gets a book with some drawings in it that he did when he was a kid from his mom. He doesn't think anything of it, he puts it on the shelf, and that night monsters show up and nobody else can see them. He thinks he's starting to go crazy, they follow him to his job and on his dates, and it turns out these monsters are fears that he never dealt with as a kid, and each one of them represents a different kind of fear. And as he conquers those fears, the guys who he slowly becomes kind of friends with, disappear. It's this bittersweet kind of ending where they go away, and so not much of that stayed. Ratatouille sparked a run on pet rats. Convincing the public that rats make trendy pets is no easy task, but Pixar was able to do so with 2007's Ratatouille. According to the British pet chain Pets at Home, their rat sales shot up by 50% following the film's release. Hopefully the pet owners knew better than to let their rats near the cooking supplies. The Incredibles was the first Pixar movie comprised only of CG human beings. Copies of the medical school text Grey's Anatomy were given to the digital sculptures to help them figure out how the human body moves. Live action footage of Pixar animators walking was also used. The Station Agent inspired Up. The Peter Dinklage-led indie movie inspired one of Pixar's most celebrated films. We looked at how other people have dealt with the subject matter. We looked at The Station Agent, a great simple character-based story of a guy who's much like Carl, comes out of his shell. Casablanca is a similar kind of story. Movies that had a beautiful simplicity to them and a focus on character. The co-writer-director of Cars died during the film's production. The movie is dedicated to Joe Ranft, a longtime collaborator of John Lasseter, Pixar Chief Creative Officer, and his co-writer and co-director on the film. Ranft died in a car accident on August 16, 2005, while Cars was still in production. Tim Burton's Corpse Bride, which Ranft executive produced, is also dedicated to him. Making Riley's emotions shine in Inside Out was a budget-busting endeavor. In discussing the best way to animate joy in Inside Out, production designer Ralph Eggleston came up with an idea, but it wasn't cheap. We worked on the idea of joy being effervescent or sparkly for champagne bubbles. We worked on that idea for about 8 months, and it got to the point where we couldn't afford to do it. There was just no way. None of the other characters had it because we just couldn't afford it. When John Lasseter saw it on Joy, he said, "That's great, put it on all the characters." You could hear the core technical staff just hitting the ground, the budget falling through the roof, but it was all good. They found a way to make it work. Pixar might have succeeded in selling rats, even if they didn't want to do that per se, but they had a hard time getting real toys on shelves. Hasbro and Mattel both turned down the toy license for Toy Story franchise, believing that they wouldn't have enough time to put a toy line together in the 11 months they had before the film came out. Small Canada-based company Thinkaway Toys got the license instead and created Woody and Buzz toys. Pixar tried to get them to manufacture Sid's nightmare-inducing mutant toys, aka a baby doll head with Erector set spider legs, but even if they did manage to sell rats, for some reason the companies passed on the idea. The Incredibles used 4 times as many locations as any other Pixar movie. It also features 781 visual effects shots, and at 121 minutes, The Incredibles is the longest Pixar movie. Cars was Paul Newman's final film and his highest grossing. In addition to being an actor, entrepreneur, philanthropist, he also became a racing enthusiast after starring in the 1969 racing drama Winning. In 2014, Disney was sued by New Jersey company Dice Lisa Industries over Toy Story 3's evil bear antagonist named Lotso Huggin, aka Lotso. DLI, which had been selling their own Lots of Hugs toy bears since 1995, argued that their ability to market their own product was substantially affected by Toy Story's 3 use of such a similar toy. Further, DLI alleged that Disney knew about their Lots of Hugs toys before Toy Story 3, as they previously licensed their hugging technology to a Disney affiliate company. Finding Nemo's popularity led to population stress for clownfish. Children were so taken with the adorable Nemo following the release of the film that the demand for clownfish as pets instantly skyrocketed. Excessive capture and sale of the ocean dwellers led to a steep decline in the organic population of the species. Some natural habitats, such as the waters surrounding Vanuatu, saw a 75% drop in clownfish numbers. Toy Story 2 was originally a direct-to-video sequel. Seeing dollar signs after their 1994 Aladdin sequel, The Return of Jafar, that pulled an estimated 100 million profit, Disney originally wanted Toy Story 2 to bypass a theatrical release and go directly to DVD. However, during the production, it became clear that Toy Story 2 was good enough and, importantly, expensive enough. Direct-to-video movies are typically done on the cheap to maximize profits, and cheap isn't something Pixar can do. So a full theatrical release was the better option. With less than a year to go before release, the Toy Story 2 team had to retool their story to add an extra 12 minutes of footage. That's all for today. Don't forget to share, like, subscribe. I'm Alex, and until next time, watch great movies.